So it's important to understand that if you're committed to widening participation, then you're committed to a campaign to change the definition of standards of excellence by which artistic activity is judged. Because unless you change the standards so that they become inclusive and representative of the wide range of people who want to express themselves through artistic quality, then people will continue to be judged not excellent if those standards of excellence remain the standards of excellence imposed by particular social and economic groups, because it reflects their tastes and preferences in the arts. So the struggle to widen participation is also a struggle to change the very definitions by which we estimate work to have been excellent or not. And the problem with McMaster's, and it will affect the youth theatre movement as well, is that what it also celebrates is what it's saying from measurement to judgment. So what it's saying is that cultural producers, cultural organisations will no longer be, what do they call it? We will free artists and cultural organisations from outdated structures and burdensome targets which can act as millstones round the neck of creativity. The difficulty with that is that a lot of those burdensome targets were social inclusion targets. They were used as a way of levering cultural organisations into the 21st century and making them think and be accountable for the profile of the audiences, the profile of the people who came into their organisations. And I'm not sure we've grown up enough yet to be so inclusive that we no longer need to check that. And what I worry about is that once those targets go, then we'll be back to judgments which are basically representative of a particular group of people in our population and not of everyone. So I think, whilst we celebrate McMaster, those of us who care about social justice in the arts, who care about participation, should be anxious. Because for me, it's signalling a move away from a preoccupation, if you like, with social inclusion and back towards a more elitist and historical understanding of what excellence in the arts means. What I also celebrate about youth theatres is that in the most case they're cheap. I have in the past cared a lot about talented young performers from disadvantaged populations and what opportunities they have to become young performers, because it is a national problem for us. And one of the greatest obstacles, of course, is not ethnicity or disability, it's money. And this is the kind of cost that there is for young people who want to become talented dancers and musicians, for instance. And then there's the issue of role models. If I'm a young black dancer and I want to become a ballet dancer, how many role models have I got? 1. Out of 9 national companies, 1 black, not even a soloist actually, a principal. So, there are those kind of obstacles and problems to overcome. So the fact that you're offering relatively cheap, high quality cultural experiences to young people, whether or not they want to go into the theatre, seems to me to be of absolute importance. So that's the kind of context to our research, and these are the principles that we've adopted, which we hope, kind of match the values of the youth theatre movement. What we're trying to do is to not come up with a set of standards or to define excellence and then send that to you and say you really ought to be keeping to these and monitoring these and assessing yourself against them. What we want to do principally is to generate internal dialogues between individual youth theatres, within individual youth theatres, between leaders and members, some kind of discussion about what counts for you in terms of excellence. And for those standards to be contextual, realistic and aspirational for that particular group. We want to generate dialogue between youth theatres based on peer review and assessment. But we also want to identify appropriate external benchmarks of excellence from a variety of different sources, so that you can kind of enrich in your internal dialogue by looking at, all right, well, what's in the world that we might want to compare ourselves to, and let's have some dialogue with that and see what works. We also want to identify national schemes of recognition and accreditation, which we realise won't be appropriate for every youth theatre, but we do think it's important that where possible, youth theatre is an important source for offering young people accreditation and training, which they may not get. The losers in the education system have the opportunity to find value in youth theatre and to find some public value. So we want to try and look at what kinds of schemes of recognition and accreditation might help. And we want particularly to build on the principles and outcomes of previous research. NAYT's had a fairly small research programme. It's been extremely rich, very creative, very innovative. And we were really impressed by Jenny Hughes and Karen Wilson's work in Playing a Part, for instance, particularly the way that they used young people as their researchers and to generate research in other workshops. And that was a real kind of model for us, and we wanted to build on that. And if any of you have read that report, Playing a Part, you'll know that what Jenny did was to kind of come up with these different models of youth theatre. You know, it's a very heterogeneous sector, very different reasons for running youth theatres, very different reasons for being in youth theatres. But broadly speaking, there are these kind of 4 kinds of models, and you might want to look and see whether you fit in any one of them or whether you cross over between them. So our research is based upon trying to work out what excellence might mean within each one of these models, so that you can find the set of standards which are most appropriate to you. This next one's about. And against that, you know, even though there are kind of different models, what Jenny identified, and I think it's what Jill was talking about as well, is that there are certain generic qualities of youth theatres, if you like, some kind of shared values, shared orientations. You know, and they are very, if you look at it from a theatre perspective, very ensemble-based principles, really. You know, and it's interesting because theatre's moving as well. You know, theatre's moving very fast in ways that bring convergence now between areas of work that you wouldn't have thought would have matched up, really. You know, I look at this list, and I'm working very closely with the RSC at the moment on understanding what ensemble means for actors who are on 2.5-year contracts. And the RSC defines the ensemble in this way. The term ensemble can describe any company of actors, whether they are brought together for a repertoire or a single show, as long as they share the same values, trusting each other and embracing a duty to experiment. The values that define the RSC's approach to ensemble are a commitment to the unexpected, born out of trust and the time the company spends together, a belief that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, a rigorous approach to training, a duty to experiment, a celebration and nurturing of the skills of emerging artists, creative communication across theatre disciplines, curiosity for and engagement with best practices from other cultures and disciplines. And I could read that on the youth theatre website, I think. You know, the notion of ensemble is offering a model for young people of the kind of world that they want to live in, you know, as well as representing the highest achievement for a cultural organisation to create that kind of thinking, working together collective of artists. You know, that comes together. Geoffrey Streetfield is playing Henry V at the moment. In talking about what it means to be in an ensemble, he described it as being a secure environment without ever being a comfort zone. You know, and that is so precisely what I hear youth theatre members and youth theatre leaders talking about when they describe their experience of youth theatre. And in a profound sense, you know, youth theatre is the cradle of ensemble-based theatre making. And ensemble-based theatre making in the context of a democracy, as I said, offers us a model for how we can live together in the world, as well as in the time and space that is youth theatre or the RSC or whatever. So very quickly, finally, what are we going to be doing then? Our aim is to produce these kinds of outcomes. We've designed a 1-hour participatory workshop to stimulate the dialogue within youth theatres that we're talking about. Some of you are going to come and share in that workshop with me. We are looking at 6 youth theatres in detail, case studying 6 youth theatres. We've been advised by NAYT to get a kind of interesting spread. And in those youth theatres, we'll be videoing the participatory workshop and using that as the basis of research. We're asking 20 additional youth theatres to run the workshop for themselves and video it and send us the results. And if anybody else is interested in doing that, we'd be very happy to give you the back. We want to publish the workshop with the findings so that other people can use it to carry on the debate and to carry on the dialogue once the findings have been published. We're going to survey the members of the case and volunteer workshops so we get a sense of what the profile is. We're particularly interested in social economic status of youth theatre members in particular. We want to consult with youth theatres about best practice in terms of widening participation or specialist or flexible provision for specific groups. We've done a lot of work on widening participation in other areas of theatre work. It's a mistake to think that every youth theatre should be integrated. You know, it's a mistake to imagine that that's what all disabled people want. It may be that we need more subtle forms of flexible provision, which allows young people to work with their own, but also allows them to mix and be with other people. So we want to kind of look at subtle ways of widening participation in that way. And we'll also do an analysis of relevant and appropriate national benchmarks of excellence and artistic standards, social experience, community arts, those kind of areas which relate to the different models that we looked at. And we'll be consulting on peer-negotiated criteria for identifying excellence in the different domains of youth theatre. So we're particularly interested in how young people's performances within the youth theatre movement are currently judged. Because what we know is that, you know, if you want to include all young people, then we need to be very, very explicit and transparent about what we're offering, what judgments we're making, or what basis we're making those judgments. So we hope to be able to contribute that to the debate. Thank you very much.